My name's Malik. So this is going to be quite an interactive session. What makes these types of sessions is where you get involved. The more you get involved, the more you actually put more of yourself into these sessions, the more you'll get out. But this session is essentially for everyone at all levels. You'll all get something out of it, and we'll kind of take you through a bit of a narrative and story as well. Before I start, I just want to say a quick thank you to the sponsors. I've organized events like these in the past. And the sponsors really make these events happen. So thank you to all who continue to support. One thing I'd like you to do is we're going to play a little exercise. So I'd like you to stand up, please. So stand up where you are. Can you do that now? Stand up and have a look around the room. I'd like you to seek out someone you've not said hello to. Remember the procedural handshake substitution rules. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to say hello to, find someone you don't know, okay, that you haven't spoken to. Say hello, greet them, and I would like you to share a story about your most embarrassing moment. You have 2 minutes. Off you go. Make a triad, make a 3 if you're slightly odd. Make a pair behind you, someone new. Okay, bring them on in. Okay. Okay, so if you see me doing this, because we're going to do a lot of workshopy stuff in a minute, it generally means can we please all do the same thing? It just reminds people. There, thank you. Right, you can do it now. You can practice it now. That's not enough, Mohammed. You do it. Yeah, there you go. That generally gets everyone facing forward because we're going to get quite noisy. So, you can put your hands down now. Who would like to share their most embarrassing moment? There's got to be one brave person here. I've got plenty of time. Thank you. 2 at the back. Well, we've got 2, so we're going to use 2. Do you want to start first?
Yes. So, don't say you. Okay, so once it happened that we were in our institute and usually the waiters were serving the breads. So there was one guy who was like taking it for himself, and I just thought that he's a waiter, and I grabbed that, and and we were both fighting that, okay, give me, and then I was very embarrassed that, okay, actually he was grabbing it for himself. That's
a good embarrassing story. Very good. Who's next? You've run away. Where's he gone? Oh, there you are. Sorry.
So I thought I have to share my Fanny's embarrassing moment.
You can share Fanny's embarrassing moment.
Yeah, because
Fanny doesn't have permission to share.
Yeah. So yesterday she had for some reason she has to scream in an office. So it was a bit louder, and the people around her was looking at her, and even the director pitched in there, and he was trying to understand what is the issue, and then I think she left for the day yesterday. So.
Sorry about that, Fanny. That's good. Welcome.
One day I was working in Dubai Mall, in the mall. So you guys know there's like the glass door. It's transparent. So I was playing my phone, and I didn't give a focus like to the door, and it's transparent. And I thought it's a way to go. Then my head punched to the door, and it was so painful. And luckily nobody observed me, so I just act like normal. Nobody see me. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Given that we're feeling like we're in a sharing mood. Okay. Good. How did that feel, by the way? Just meeting someone new, and then B, for the first time, sharing something that might have felt quite intimate. Can you share what you're just saying? How did that feel?
Oh, I didn't get an embarrassing moment from Judith.
Judith, would you like to share your embarrassing moment with everybody? Okay. So anyone else, how did it make you feel? Just shout words out, one word. Uncomfortable. Thank you. What else? You do it every day, Mohammed. Yeah, just share embarrassing moments with strangers every day of my life. Yeah. Normal. That's fine for Mohammed. Yeah. What else? Anybody? Any other words? Embarrassing. Yeah. A bit awkward. Once you'd shared that, what are we doing now? Once we've shared it, how do we feel now? Oh, a few words. Relaxed. Creating a bond, yeah. Creating a human network. A lot of this workshop is about human networks, actually, and what Agile changes, what I feel, from my experience, it's really about in organizations. And I guess where I've seen the most success, it is about going over an edge with people. It's about going out of your way to create that kind of bond, to really change that human network, or create a new human network by changing that human system, right? By interacting in ways that we often find uncomfortable, often wouldn't even think of, subconsciously in many ways, avoid doing. We've all seen those people that we walk past in the corridor at work, that we've done so for the last 3 years. They've never said hello. They've never passed an eye contact, never made eye contact with you. Imagine those people sitting together in workshops or working together in a way that and I've experienced this, I've said, I can't believe we haven't worked like this before. So now we've gotten over an edge and we've kind of broken the ice. Hopefully the rest of the workshop you'll kind of feel what we've been experiencing in organizations. If nothing else, you've made a friend, so you can hang out with that friend if you want. Now, if you don't hang out with that friend, then you're telling them something. But you can sit with them. You can generally work with them, because we're going to be working in various groups and so on and so forth. But for now, take a seat. Thank you for participating. We'll move on. You can sit with your friend if you want. There won't be. Okay, so what is this? So a little bit about me. Sorry, the boring stuff. So my name is Malik. I'm from the United Kingdom. I work my role is an Agile coach primarily, I suppose, a coach. By trade, I'm a coach. My passion is people like you guys in organizations, and helping get the best out of you. Growing you guys is really what I love doing, what we love doing. So I'm an enterprise coach with the Scrum Alliance. I'm also a certified coach with the ICF, International Coach Federation, certified Scrum trainer and other things. But really my experience and passion is around people. I've been in industry for about 19 plus 20 years, but working in Agile about 13 years through various organizations, fintech, pharmaceutical, aerospace and others, working in transformation, some successful, many unsuccessful actually. I'm probably here to talk more about the failures. But all of those transformations had something connected that I kind of experienced over the years. I couldn't put my finger on it. Certainly the more successful transformations had something going for them. And again, I couldn't really work out at the time what I was doing, because it's a very complex thing, what I was doing that was making a difference. But as I started experiencing coaching more and organizational change more, it kind of started coming to me, and then essentially started looking at the deeper principles around change and human change, which is something that I'm quite passionate about. Yeah, that's me really. So what are the 10 principles of enterprise agility? By the way, on your tables, you all have these sort of printed sheets. I'd like you to, well, feel free to take them away. Oh, if you don't, can you, people who are waving and looking sort of somewhat concerned that they don't have them on their tables, can you send spare copies back to them? There's also some over here, guys, if you don't have any, there's some on these tables. These are the copy of the 10 principles that we created as a team, this team here. And I'll share a bit of a backstory of where these came from. I was at the Agile Coaching Retreat in Copenhagen in 2017. If you've not attended Agile Coaching Retreats, they might not be common this part of the world, but certainly in Europe they're quite common. And what we do is, the idea is about 80, it's capped at about 80 people, and we all get together over a sort of 2.5-day retreat, and we use iterative and incremental kind of delivery frameworks like Scrum, for example, in sprints, to actually think of an idea, and bring that idea to fruition in some way. So typically, the night before we start, we get together, we have dinner, and then we have a marketplace, and people put forward topics, and we could naturally grow teams, and then we kind of create a concept or a vision, and beyond that, we grow that vision. So how this started was this chap in the middle here. So who have we got here? The team of 5. We've got myself, we've got Falk Kluner, Michael Kononiko, who's a product owner, Craig Pearson, and Tom Reynolds, who's also a partner in Beliminal. Dragon is also in the corner as well. He's one of our partners at Beliminal. I saw Michael scrawling something on a flip chart paper. We were lots of people in the room walking around, looking at what things interested us. And Michael was scrawling something around different frameworks, safe and less, and all this kind of stuff, and challenging words, and things he was unsure about. So I started having a chat with Michael about understanding what his concern was. And what I found was his concern was very similar to mine, in that we have all these scaling frameworks, we have all these buzzwords. While they're useful and they have meaning, there's something missing. We weren't quite sure what at the time, but certainly there are things that we focused more on, more procedural processes rather than actually anything deeper, and coaching was a challenge. And then the rest of the guys slowly joined, and we formed a team of 5. And we essentially came up with the 10 principles of enterprise agility, as you see them here, during those 2 days. We've published them. They're available for anybody to use. And really, the purpose behind them was this, really to understand, this was our vision, for Agile coaches to understand the principles that allow enterprise agility to flourish. One of the things that I had an epiphany of during those 2 days, and things that solidified with me, is that where I've had some real success with Agile transformations has been less about frameworks or even big Agile stuff, and more about deeper concepts around coaching and human change, and actually change itself. So we started thinking about these ideas a little bit more, and I kind of started thinking, well, what was I doing and what were we doing in organizations that actually was making a difference? So I'm going to what we're going to do over the course of the next sort of 30 minutes or so, it's going to kind of be a free-form workshop, and then we'll kind of play back some of those principles and play back your own development and learning throughout these 30 minutes or so. So when I was thinking about this workshop, I ran this workshop in Vienna at the Vienna Scrum Gathering, and it went really, really well, and people really resonated with it. And I've run it at a few meetup groups in Europe as well. There were 2 key things that were coming to me when I was thinking about the application of these principles in organizations. So it's all well and good talking about them. What do we do to apply them? Where should we start? So where should Agile coaches start? There's 2 things here. One's mindsets, and one's human behaviors. Those are 2 things that came to me. What we really refer to as mindsets being kind of challenging an established set of attitudes held by someone or a group. So you will experience this in your organizations. This is how we've done things. This is kind of what we always do. We're not going to change anything, or we'll kind of give it lip service, we'll put some process around it, but actually we won't do anything deeper than that. As long as there's someone there turning the handle, some Agile coach, then that's okay. But as soon as he or she leaves, it all goes back to nothing, right? We go back to what we knew before. Change is hard. So therefore, if we understand mindsets, what are the behaviors that we're looking for? What are the actions Behaviors like acts, how people conduct themselves towards others, so that's the interpersonal part, but also towards their own self-belief about what they can and can't do. Agile is more about that than it is about any of the stuff, as much as more about that necessarily than any of the stuff that we always talk about traditionally, right? Frameworks and other things. So I'll give you a small, before I start the workshop off, I'll give you a small example of where this came through. So in about 2013, 14, I was invited to a quite large fintech in Liverpool Street in London, in the city. It's a pensions company. And the CIO invited us to do a pitch, essentially, wanted us to work with him, and he wanted to share share his thoughts. And this is a genuine story. I stood at the foot of Salesforce Tower, and I looked up at this tower, and I sighed. I thought, here we go again. This is another leadership team member who's going to often just, come from a point of the same story, the same kind of procedural way of thinking. When I got in there and he presented to me what he had been thinking about, I was blown away because the CIO himself had prepared a presentation that he'd already given to the board but was showing me, and they were all based on principles. There was not one practice in there, not even one Agile framework. They were based around core principles, even beyond the Agile Manifesto. Things like understanding waste better, more lean, lean-based principles, but also how interpersonal behaviors and relationships, how we really want our Agile coaches to behave with people and get people to behave with them in the organizations. And that was one of the most successful transformations that I worked on, and primarily was because the leadership team had buy-in, not just buy-in, yes, we want to be agile and we want to apply these principles and values, but actually someone in the organization who was a real champion, someone who understood it at the senior leadership level and got everyone on board with this change across the organization. So what I'm going to get you guys to do next is we've got the 10 principles along the wall here, right? They're all there, and you have your pieces of paper, your little principles paper that elaborate those principles. What you're going to do in a moment is you're going to self-organize and sort of equally spread yourselves around those 10 principles, okay? Let's do this because we're a smaller group. I've done this with a much larger group. So what I'm going to get you to do, I'm going to get you all to experience those 10 principles, right? Not just one set. So create a group maybe of no less than 3, if possible, per flip chart. And you're going to focus on 2 things. You're going to ask the question, what mindset shifts and changes in human behavior would you expect to see in your organization based on the principle that you're looking at? So let's look at the first one, for example. Remember the 2 things, mindset shifts and behaviors. So the first thing is identifying motives, for example. Well, the mindset shifts might be more about curiosity. That's maybe one of many, right? There's no hard and fast rule here. I'm always surprised and interested by the things that you guys come up with. This is getting people in the organization to understand what their motives are for change. If a leadership team member or someone, my sponsor, can't give me a clear motive for change, I would rather not engage with them until they have a clear motive. Or maybe that's an opportunity for us to work on a clear motive before we even start any kind of transformation, right? So those are things that are really important. So what's the mindset shift there? And then therefore, based on that, what behavioral change would you see? What adaptations would you see happening in the organization? So behavioral changes in terms of how another person is with someone else, or how another person wants to change something, actionably change something. So we have Post-its on here. So these are all to use. People didn't use these in Reggie's session last, so use them, open them. You have Post-its, you have colored pens. I don't care what you do to those flip charts. You can draw on them, you can put Post-its on them, you can do whatever you like. We're going to do this. In groups, you're going to answer those questions. What mindset shifts are you going to see, and what behavioral change are you going to see? What I'll do is I'll give you a few minutes per flip chart, okay? And then I'll move you along to the next flip chart. So we'll kind of move along. So the guys that start here will move to identifying motives and so on and so forth. So you'll get to see all of them, okay? Should we do it that way? No, actually, I'm going to change it. I'm not going to do it that way. I'll tell you how we're going to do it. Go to the one that you're most passionate about, number one. Let's do it this way. The most that you're passionate about, but try and make it as equal as possible. If you find after a first sort of 10, 15 minutes that you've given as much as you can to that flip chart, walk the floor yourself and go to another one and join another team and input into them and get some ideas from them as well. So let's make it more free. I don't want to be too restrictive. So on each flip chart, I want you to consider mindset shifts, so some mindset shifts that you're going to brainstorm together, and those behavioral changes that you want to see that support those mindset shifts. Is that clear? Okay, I'm going to give you 20 minutes for this part, and then we're going to walk through them. So you're going to stand up a little bit, you're going to do some work, and then we're going to sit down. 20 minutes, get up off your seats, create your groups, and I'll bring you back in. I'm around to help you as well. So I'll put this one up. No. So mindset shifts are, what sets of attitudes do you want to see change? No. What attitudes do you want to see? What do you want to see? Language is really important. What do you want to see? Yeah. So what attitudes? I want to see someone who has this attitude. Curiosity. I'd like you to all to have read at least all of them and experienced mindset behavior shifts in all of them. So if you want to take your group and move along and make sure you see all of them at least, okay, that would be really helpful. Okay. Okay, I'd like you to hang around here if you can. I mean, if you, of course, please feel free to sit down close by if you feel tired, because it is the end of the day, of course. But we're going to kind of focus on this a little bit more. What I'd like to do is, all of you have contributed to these, so thank you very much. Quick question, whose head's hurting after that a little bit when you're thinking of mindsets and behaviors? Anyone struggle? Hopefully more people did struggle with it. It's supposed to hurt your head. Would you mind fixing that for us at the back? It's supposed to hurt your head. That's the whole idea. It's not something that comes easily, but it doesn't matter if you come up with one thing or 5 things, and I've run this workshop quite a few times now through people asking me to run it, and I never get, it always surprises me how much you guys come out with. So, contribute, I would like people to present back on a particular flip chart. Now, the best way to do this is if you've contributed the most to a particular flip chart, then do pair, or if you could volunteer yourself to come up and explain, not exhaustively, but some of the key topics on each of those, okay? So identifying motives. There's no particular order to these, right? But motives is not a bad place to start. Motives is about purpose. If you are, how many here are currently in some kind of organizational change, agile change program of some kind in their organization? Hands right up so I can see. Half. How many of you have a clear motive? You understand the reasons as an organization why you want to change? Yeah, only a few of you put your hand up. I would not start any transformation without knowing that very clearly with my client or people I coach or work with. Going back to the example of the CIO, he had a clear motive. In fact, that's what attracted me to him immediately, or enamored me with his proposition, is that he had a very clear motive and he had a clear, digestible message for his organization. There's many ways that you can do this. You can even run a little workshop with your sponsorship team or leadership team around just motives, around this principle. Do we actually understand who we are, what we want to do, what our executive imperatives are as a kind of an outcome of this? So who spent more time on identifying motives? Where is it? It's right at the back there. Would someone like to just explain what's on those post-its or what's written? I think you guys were on the table, so feel free to share, but if anyone else can as well. Can you read out what's there for the group? What have we got?
We've got understand purpose slash business need, engagement, understand agile journey, collaborative mindset, and delivering continuous value. There's openness, transparency, visualizing results, vision, feel like a close family member, and yeah, that.
So what was that? Who said that? Shout louder.
Be
Be a driver, then be driven. Yeah. So when you're working on that, some of the things that sort of come out is really getting people to think hard about why they want to do something. Otherwise, it's a danger of becoming procedural, operational, and that's not our roles as Agile coaches in organizations. We want to be made redundant. So the next one, am I too far away? Oh, there we go. Challenge beliefs. So this one, feel free to start wandering to that flip chart, whoever wants to talk while I'm talking. So feel free to do that. This is about something around a different talk I actually have, which I've done a couple of years ago. I haven't done here, though, before, around limiting beliefs, about this idea of people in your organizations not being very comfortable about pushing their boundaries or doing things. They just feel, actually quite subconsciously, that they're not going to be any good at something. And I can't attitude or that won't work attitude. And that shuts things down constantly in your organization if you're trying to change. Where was that one? Challenging beliefs is here. So can someone kind of walk through this with me? Who kind of contributes to that more, is passionate about that more? Mike, do you want to grab the mic quickly? Run. There you go. Okay, challenging beliefs.
So we have seen this in a particular organization as well, that there are people who are more into command and control type of mindset.
Yeah.
That, if we go towards Agile, we will lose our authority, we'll lose our places. They don't trust the change, that it will empower them as well. And the behavior that can change that mindset, to our opinion, was, to, give trust to them, develop trust within team, have transparency, that, whatever is happening for a reason, and everyone knows that reason clearly. And, open communication, that, how it will benefit on each level of, our organization architecture or structure.
Yeah.
This is what we thought.
Okay. When I've coached people in organizations, I've done extensive coaching around limiting beliefs, just on the topic of limiting beliefs or challenging limiting beliefs. So my backdrop, while the context has been agile transformation, my focus on individuals or groups of individuals, key people in that, have been around limiting beliefs. One example is for a very large pharmaceutical company, for a very large change program, agile change program. I had a product owner, for example, who I could see, while he wasn't saying anything, who was completely out of his depth. It's not that he was incapable of doing what he was doing. He had 26 member countries around the world as stakeholders, and he was panicking. He was actually, you could see his face was really, really concerned every time that came up. He was not confident. He had an issue about his ability to do his role. One of the roles that I had as part of that transformation was to make sure that this product owner could be the best person that he could be, right? The best individual in that role. So we did a lot of work around limiting beliefs, lots of coaching specifically about what are his limiting beliefs, thinking about limiting beliefs, and actually getting him to write them out, for example, and change them and think about them more and actually challenge himself. Fast forward 6 months, and he would never have seen him do this, in a very large workshop with lots of people from different countries who are his key stakeholders, him presenting the first wave, what they called wave 1, a few months later of that delivery that he had. And the previous deliveries were quite challenging, actually, for him and others. So the context might be agile, but actually you're coaching a person, and that's the key thing here. The third one even, don't die. Focus on your customers. So who had that and who wants to talk about that? Do you want to go and pass the mic on? What are the key mindset shifts and changes, attitudes and behaviors that you wanted to see?
I can't read this handwriting. Who had the green posties?
Own up to the handwriting.
Wasn't me. Yeah, I think, first of all, I don't know about anyone else, but I had to keep looking back at the definition of mindset. I kept on forgetting what it was. But I think one of the key things to focus on our customer, the mindset that we wanted to change was to actually include the customer, and I'm not quite, I had difficulty getting the difference between what's a behavior change and what's a mindset change. But in summary, we really said that the one thing we wanted to change was where we were more empathetic with our customer, maybe listen to them as a change, even actually in some instances perhaps act as the customer, or walk a mile in their shoes. That type of a change, and then in I guess classic Agile terminology, to maybe include the customer in more in feedbacks and the idea of a retrospective, that maybe currently we a bit standoffish with our customers. We kind of think of what they want and try and give it to them, but we need to involve them a little bit more in that closed loop feedback. So, like I said, I had difficulty with trying to clearly define what's a mindset and what's a behavior. But from the description of the board, anyway, I think we came up with some good ideas.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. Anyone experience people in their organizations, perhaps stakeholders of a certain description that have a thing, a project, an idea, that their baby that they just want to follow, and they ignore everything else? This is something they want to do, irrespective of the feedback they're getting. This is kind of how it should be. A lot of organizations don't do, well, not some organizations are now smarter, and they look at, they actually go very deep into the customer journey, for example. It's all about the customer to many of the very successful organizations currently on our planet. And pleasing the customer in a lot of ways. That's not to say that they don't have their own understanding of their proposition that don't meet their executive imperatives. Of course they do. This is all aligned. They're all aligned to their motives, but they clearly they take away key learnings from their customer and then implement those within their products or their propositions or whatever they are that they're doing to deliver. This was a real challenge in that particular organization, the fintech I was in, because their customers were both internal and external, and their product people had to really think hard, both in the propositions, what do our customers actually, what are our customers telling us, and what do we actually need to do to change? So that's quite an interesting one. The fourth one is aligned to this a little bit, with aligning around value. So who spent more time on that? Where is that? Just next to that, actually. So who spent more time on that? Okay.
Since Agile is all about living the values and pleasing the customers, but the mindset, when you're aligning around the values, first mindset should be that you will be give value to the people who are working for you. Then the behavior should be there, that there should be a culture of respect there. The team should be empowered enough to take their own decisions. And there should be the servant leadership must be there, so that the team will be having that comfort that whatever decision they are taking up belongs to what they are going to deliver for the business values.
Yeah, spot on. And it's not just about business value here, it's any kind of value, and not just values that we have plastered around the wall. It's not what we do with each other, but how we're being with each other, and how do we want to be with each other. So there's a couple of things here. The fifth one, I want to ask a question potentially. So this one is about emergent for lasting change. Who focused on this one? That's the one next to that. Who wants to share what you guys created on that?
For emergence for lasting change, we talked about the fact that we should think about long-term thinking. It was the main idea that we brought around that. And we talked about adapting what we want to do to our own context, to make it lasting change, as we heard. Before, if you take a model from a different company, you put it, it will be nice in the beginning, but will not stay because you are changing, you are evolving. So you have to understand that, you have to adapt it to your own context after even thinking about the framework you want to use. And we talked about safe and collaborative and trustful. To be able to make a lasting change, we have to trust whatever we decide to do. We have to build trust in it. We have to trust in the fact that of where we are going to. So these were the ideas, and what other people wrote was changing culture and bureaucracy, decentralized decision makings, and we had behavioral change with respect, openness, and collaborations.
That's brilliant. It's nicely put. I've got a question for you guys. Anyone know who this is?
Yeah.
Who's that? Who is that?
I don't remember the name. Susan Boyle.
Susan Boyle. Why is it that you remember a person from a talent show in 2008, August 2008, who came second?
Because when she came on the stage, everyone, based upon her appearance, made up their mind that she cannot be that brilliant and everything.
Right, what did they do? They started laughing, right? Yes. So they had a mental model of what a successful person looks like, and they had a mental model of, what a great singer would be. So they were laughing at her, and she was a bit annoying in some cases, but that was maybe a part of the act. Who knows? But what happened? More interestingly, what happened when she started singing? What happened to the audience? Everybody was surprised. Quiet. They just stopped laughing. Something else also happened. They began supporting her, but a lot of people were also crying, and a lot of people were crying. That's a mental model changing right there. That's an emotional state of a mental model. A lot of emergence for lasting change for me is about mental models, about how we shift our mental models, about how we assume things. And sometimes it's a very subconscious thing. It's going to be like this. It's not always like that. And if we are going to change, we have to, for example, embrace failure. We talk about this a lot, right? In agile transformations, in frameworks, we talk about principles, we talk about failure. But what does that actually mean? If you're coaching around this stuff, and I do mean deep coaching, what does coaching around failure actually mean? And how do you how? The how is wide and many. I'm not here to talk about the how. I'm talking about the actual principle. The how, you can all come up with amazing things you can do in your organization, and each one of them will be the best way for you in your organization. I think that's the key thing. Okay, moving on, because we are running out of time a little bit. Learning attitude. Who wants to share that? That's over here. Share a little bit about that. Would you like to? Or anybody? Oh, you did the last one, didn't you? Anybody? Who spent a little bit of time? Judith, you want to help us out on that one? You can make it brief if you like, that's fine.
Yeah, so what we mainly talk about here is like the mindset, curiosity. You have to be open and motivated to learn. And there's a behavior like knowledge sharing as well, like, constantly share the knowledge between each other. The other mindset we came up was engaged, and the behavior was interested and aware as well. I can see a few other here, which I can't really read. Fail as early as possible. Fail as early as possible. Knowledge is power, and Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah, this links. Thank you for that, Judith. It links to failure quite nicely as well. But for me, this is a lot about this idea of maximal learning or continual learning. If your organizational mindset is of a continual learning nature, people in your organization will adopt that way of thinking. So thank you for that. Moving on, we've got respect the journey. This is always a tough one. Who wants to share a little bit more about what was on respect the journey? Whoever contributed to that the most. Anyone write post-its for that? Yeah, do you want to go? Hand the mic over.
Okay, so when we say respect the journey, like I think first challenge is going to be for any agile transformation is that like So it should not sound like that whatever you were doing is crap and Agile is the final solution. That
Right.
will create a big confusion and psychological safety also will create there. So people will feel threatened, okay, I am going to lose my job. So we have to take everybody in confidence. So we mentioned a few points like we have to make some kind of a mindset that willing to learn, openness, and like open for the criticism, and ready to take a risk, and even if it is a small failure, it's okay. So those kind of mindset we have to build. So that's pretty much we have mentioned here. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's really, for me, also about learning from the journey. So, you know, we've had a past, and while we don't dwell on the past, we do respect things happened in the past, and some of them might have been awkward in terms of change, but what we're doing is we're accepting those things and we're learning from them. So actually building mechanisms in that actually have that as a focal point. In the fintech, we did that all the time. We brought the learnings back in. In fact, I was the second or third wave of Agile change that hadn't worked in the organization, and a lot of people were bruised. So as part of the limiting beliefs, that links into that as well. People you know, do remember things. So moving on, overcoming inertia. If someone wants to share a few things on that, that's there. Whoever's there, if they can share, pass the mic on.
See, the 2 points that we thought about was, one was like transparency.
Yep.
And the second one, what we thought was like not to be happy with what we already doing. We should always or continuously try to improve.
Yeah.
And from a behavior point of view, there should not be any fear for failure.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because you mentioned, you know, you get to a point where you feel like you've achieved quite a lot and you become complacent because you are comfortable. Getting too comfortable as an organization, I'm talking about an organization-wide comfortability, can be challenging for some organizations when they do need to push to the next level of change. And that then in itself becomes resistance. And, you know, for Agile coaches, this is a real challenge. Not, you know, sticking a process in to manage that is not the answer. Deep coaching is the answer. In fact, reflecting on Kaizen, which we were talking about, Scott was talking about earlier on, continuous improvement, and actually having mechanisms for continuous improvement based on whatever you're doing. By the way, any of this stuff, the organization should be making the decision about what experiments they want to run, not you as an Agile coach. You're there to guide and support. Second to last, human behaviors. This is one of my favorite ones. What human behaviors, what was on there, and what did you reflect on? Whoever added the most to that.
So for mindset, what we have here is everybody is involved in the business. And I mean, yeah, so for mindset, so another one we say everybody is important. And then for behavioral change, we said being inclusive and being empathic. Other people have been trustful and open-minded and to be transparent. Also, there is people are assets, and the behavior for that is to share responsibility. And then, I can't say this, aligning individual goals with company vision. Yeah, empowering employees.
Great, that's amazing. What one word do you think would summarize that, all that for you? For individuals, this is a heart. I mean, it starts with people at the heart of our inspiration and what we do, that kind of thing. Freedom. What are the words? Trust, empathy. What are the words?
Inclusion.
Sorry?
Inclusion.
Inclusion. I'd add one more, and that's motivation. If people, so all those things are amazing, but if people aren't motivated to do those things, they will never do anything for you in your organization. How do you motivate people in your organizations right now? Include them, so being inclusive, yeah. What else? Incentivize in what way? Bags of cash? Well,
but I mean, even just make sure that, again, by the inclusion, because when they feel like they're doing something meaningful, that part of the approach that they're more basically engaged in.
yeah, absolutely. I want to share with you quickly on this. There's 4 levels of engagement which you might find useful. I do talk a little bit about motivation in some of the talks I do, but there are 4 levels of motivation in any of the coaching that we're doing here. I can't tell the full story because of time, but it comes from Damien Hughes, who's a boxing, who's a professor at Manchester Met University. He's also a sports psychologist. He's a really interesting guy, got some fantastic books, Damien Hughes. He talks about these 4 levels of engagement, which is when I heard Damien told me this story directly, it just like 1,000 light bulbs went off. This is exactly what I'd been doing in organizations when it came to coaching. Ultimately, you can't, you have to support before you can explain something. You have to care for someone and feel that they're cared for before they actually listen to you. And people are motivated. There's 4 key things that ultimately motivate people. One is a sense of belonging. Having teams. So for example, Scrum teams is a good example of that. Having a family that they create or any kind of team that they create creates a sense of belonging. Someone that can be transparent with, open with, share real values with. Second thing is safety. We've talked about psychological safety to death in a lot of cases, but actually this is having a safe place to share stuff. Third thing, being valued, and that's kind of similar to what Eugene was saying, essentially getting people to feel valued. That's not just necessarily monetary, it's just generally to be supportive and generally tell them when they've done some great stuff. And give them control, give them perceived control or a sense of control. That's autonomy. Those 4 things, if you can enable those as coaches, not only will people be motivated, but when you're coaching them, they're in something that I call in the tranquil mind. There's a model I've created for another time, but that's kind of when for effective coaching to occur, this needs to happen. So you have to be a bit provocative, really, in the organization to challenge those things. You have to really create human networks and connections in order for it to work, and you have to nurture them, right? They won't always be sustained. So this is just one thing for a coach to do. It's quite a lot of stuff. I'll go through the last one, coaching sustainability myself, but this is really about creating a capability. How many of you find that Agile coaches come in and after a while they become part of the furniture and they kind of stay for a long time, and they might be doing great stuff, but what they're not doing is they're not creating a capability internally. One of the things we do is, for example, if you've got Agile coaches or Scrum Masters in your organization, we focus on those people if they're internal and they're part of your organization and they're part of roles to maintain or actually grow them and help them develop. So some of the things you mentioned here around, I won't read all of them out, but you've got mindset, sort of creating a free space behavior to ask questions and not always bring solutions, so getting them to think. Proactivity, so being proactive in supporting the growth of these people, having sort of trust and acceptance of where they are now, but also longevity of growth in this space. A lot of Agile transformations, meaningful Agile transformations, don't spend time growing coaches, and I mean growing coaches in the truest sense internally. So I'm getting glaring looks now that it's close to 5 o'clock, so I'll finish up. What do I want you to remember from any of this, okay? The fact that your brain's been working overtime and I've been getting a lot of questions is a good thing, because I'm getting you to pull away from scaling frameworks and think about the essence of what change actually means in an organization, and these principles can really help. What you're doing is you're rewiring the organizational brain. That's essentially what you're doing. And as an Agile coach, that's a really hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do for your organization. So remember that. This is something that the whole organization is doing, not just you. Experience realization, self-awareness, and challenge limiting beliefs. That comes as part of the change. Meaningful change will come when you create and take ownership. Get them to do the stuff. Don't necessarily, suggest changes. Get people to learn and grow from that. Allow your human networks to flourish. Right, stick to your principles and move beyond scaling frameworks and coach people. I want to leave this. Anyone heard of the Kung Fu principles? Because I've just made those up for this presentation. If you practice for the same thing constantly, right, you will never succeed. You can practice 1,000 times for a particular attack, but if you stick to the principles, that's what matters. That's the most important thing. And the final thing I want to leave you with is. Angelo Dundee, Muhammad Ali's boxing coach, essentially paraphrased, I don't coach boxers, I coach people. We're not there to coach Agile stuff. We're there to coach people, actually, even as Agile coaches, and that's where you'll get most of the success. Applying these principles to human beings is where a lot of those changes will happen. Culture, amazing word, but really that's just your people in the organization experiencing the personality of the organization. That's all it is. They make up the personality. How can you help them change the personality? My view is you help them by changing themselves. That's the end. Thank you very much for your participation.